It is a shame that my most important videos are virtually unwatchable. And there is a reason for this. It's not that they're not um, standard issue in terms of quality or comprehensibility. It's because they go against the closet plebiscite to black out certain issues and not allow them to be heard. So it's a form of paranormal censorship that is at work. And as a result of that, I sometimes despair of help ever arriving. Some children, no doubt, got the message about the United States of America when Trump and Biden conspired in the COVID monstrosity. They watched grandmothers perish in old folks' homes. They saw their schools closed, and they knew that the political system was lying to them about what had just happened. A few people realized that there's a critter who's been around for a long time who investigated the AIDS attack, who maybe should have been recognized as having more veracity than the liars clubs at large in American civics. Well, don't give up hope altogether. It's not that I haven't proven my case. It is a signifier of the breakdown of American pretenses that the civics of Seattle and UW Dialectical have conspired with criminals at the University of Pittsburgh who were shamelessly robbing our museums, torturing children and using them for chattel slavery, in abrogating the laws against defrauding somebody. Now, the root of this is the claim that Yoko Ono had the right to create a moonshine war crimes trial board with the help of the NAACP against my distinguished father, who drove a school bus in retirement. Obviously, they can't come out and admit that's what they did because it's criminally insane. They're waiting until it's too late to help me. And then they will upload their claim and say it's enforced by media law. You can't tell the truth about what they pulled, which was a Houdini by John Lennon. All of the evidence supports that. Politically, I've lost. He has a death certificate issued to Yoko Ono. Legally, I've lost because of the swarms of dope heads who support John Lennon's plastic reality invention. But academically, there's no way out. All of the evidence confirms. In fact, the whole mission statement ceases to make sense until you admit Lennon pulled a Houdini. Then it all falls into place. And there's no other explanation but that he pulled a Mission Impossible that had been in the works for double fantasy with films like You Only Live Twice. That's what happened. It was an Ian Fleming brainchild. And UW Dialectical has schemed to claim that they have the right to impinge their quasi-legal system on the right of a deaf person to be paid for their work, which is criminally insane. It's an abrogation of all of the laws of the United States. You don't have the legal right to bully somebody into selling their work for less than they're worth. You don't have the legal right to do it, but you do it anyway as a quasi-mechanical moonshine war crime trial in which I had no role in the claim by the Confederacy of having been wronged by Hiroshima. No role whatsoever. The poachers have this idea of investing as attackers. These were the people behind the AIDS attack who invested in survivors' guilt so they could be the iron hammer belaboring the living, demanding to extort support. Now, the liberal vision that I share is that although a person is entitled to the fruit of their labor, there has to be a system of distributive justice in place. Hitler Reagan made a joke of the idea of distributive justice. And he said, here's what we'll do, is you'll keep playing that tune, you sorry little liberal. And in return, I'm going to make it as hard for you as I possibly can, and we'll see who gets the last laugh. The slave machine of Roger Waters has laughed through the entire extermination program. And they've pretended to be in defiance of what? Of the codes of distributive justice that have to be concerned with echo schools and public health care. The Israelis have set an example for Seattle, Washington. Seattle, Washington, the clubhouse movement is notorious for being organ harvesters. They made no secret of their claim that they had the right to poison me internally because some of them have failing kidneys. And this is their mindset. They have a grid of wound compare. They completely smashed the idea of the Hippocratic Oath. They not only steal from museums, they poach organs. They're organ harvesters. The entire sensibility of Peter Gabriel is organ harvesting. He helped Ian Wattenmaker in neurobehavioral research and brain surgery play the song Neurosurgeons Scream for More. Poison me in the nervous system with a nerve agent. Get away with it because he was Israeli. Argue for the franchise of the Curry Brain for Britain. And then printed a picture of Mackenzie Shirilla with a line across her skull after they car bombed her. This is the reality of Seattle clubhouse movement. Now, it got started, they say, with a discreet intercept of a scroll they actually wrote. In other words, it's so suspicious that they can't even allow the alternative explanation, which was they knew where to look and they knew what was there. And as a result, they didn't even have to look at it to start their super production. Penis Gabriel was talking about pulling at the cupboards where the drawers slide smooth, digging at the gold of the artwork in the wording. Long before they announced their hostilities for Lenin. And what I was doing was following the curve of the extermination process to get evidence. And that's perfectly obvious. Being kidnapped on a snowy, cold, freezing day as a traumatized child, for which I was mocked later as a Palestinian by Pitt News, literally mocked publicly. They showed me, they all went crazy with hilarity when I showed up in a chic style poncho. It's not being kidnapped on a freezing cold day in a trauma coma state is not date rape. No matter how many times Penis Gabriel plays that it is date rape, it will never be date rape. And so they went out and raped a woman who taught me sign language in revenge for being kidnapped and tortured on a freezing cold day. This is what Yoko Ono thinks is justice. because of her moonshine war crime trial. So what they get is little stage masteries from the Green Party. They get somebody, we don't know what race he is, but the races work together in the Green Party. And he shoots somebody who's asleep on a bus, and 5 times. So you're supposed to go, oh, wow. They killed Dozer somebody. They killed Dozer. Well, let me tell you what really happened. Is that they make this bright. Aaron Wattenmaker showed me Yad Vashem, and his father told me about Yad Vashem. His father was a Attica State prison psychiatrist who ended up next door to me. My mother evidently sold me to them for this experiment. And he showed me Yad Vashem, and when I see the word deicide, I think of Yad Vashem. And it's in the King Crimson cartoon I drew when I was 9 years old. So you can see it says something about the promised land. So they were hypnotizing me to the burden of spectroscopy and Kazetnik Shaviti as they planned this organ harvest of the Crary brain for their Frankenstein. The East Liberty telephone book even had a Dr. Frankenstein on Bunker Hill in those days. So they have this concept going and they're selling it to each other. And then they say that the slave tried to escape. And the real killdozer was Amanda Harcourt. She said something very perverse to me in a letter. I guess I was rather haughty. And you're supposed to figure out years later as a poet that they meant you would rather have a haughty. In other words, you dared to fall in love with somebody. And they were saying, don't get involved in a personal correspondence. Well, fine. And then they send this Nazi Harcourt to say, oh, he cheated on me because they're criminally insane. And they what they did was they lowered the curtain. They said the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. This is, mind you, 1984, when they had a chance to warn people. AIDS is an attack. Protect yourselves. Be careful. We need to get tests. Instead, they blew on the fire with Hitler Reagan. They said, oh, the queers. Oh, you're queer. Love your nails. And the horses were panicked and ran towards the burning barn. They even have a notation about the burning barn that they spoke the horses to in the Texas school book script. So Amanda Harcourt lowers the curtain and says, go to sleep, little ones. And then they start having this thing from Pierre Elliott's Consciousness with Viktor Frankl's mystique over Colin Powell. And Obama and Mickey Obama go to the Behemoth Grove dressed up as warriors. And Dr. Proctor pours out a mountain of swastikas, German ugly swastika, and says they're the Heinz family's link to sacred African ancestors. This is reality. And the perfect storm shows up in the grocery stores while they're burning QAT oil fields. Do you feel better, little queer mate? And Roger Waters comes and says, the throng of what they call plague mass feels better. They have Diamanda Gallis outside the World Trade Center. Remember the anthrax holding a stiletto? And she's a friend of Kim Kardashian. Cliff Robertson went above the World Trade Center in a private plane to watch the festivities. He was in the premiere episode of The Outer Limits, We Now Take Control of Your Television Set, for Revolution number 9 that was delayed for Kennedy's state funeral. And he poached a persona by starring in PT 109. A namesake of Diagolos called me when Lenin pulled his Houdini to tell me while I was living with Obama's Afghan director of Army Services at Temple University. Her name was Daya. And she called me to tell me that Lenin had stepped out. And they have this name, Daya of Dermond, calls me to make this announcement for Gail Burstyn, who appears on the cover of a Fripp record in continue her familiar double agency. This double O system of double fantasy is ingrained in the presentation system of a record company that was publishing these things a year before they claimed Young and died. And it was all in an art of found art for Pierre Elliott. So they're poaching the inner sanctum of the subconscious for their invisible plebiscite. And the brutality of organ theft is hardly beyond them. My mother had Hitler nuns on a painting of Hitler nuns on her wall. So what they did was impinge helter skelter. Remember, do you or don't you want me to make you? They had Leslie rubbing her behemoth on my chin and taunting me night after night for months, and I was too shy of a coy mistress to what she said. She taunted me, why should you get another chance? To force myself on her, and that's how they made the conversion of being kidnapped on a snowy day into helter-skelter conversion for a group that literally called themselves Mancine, snuff film. And the traitors into comic, you can't get more traitor. You can't get more traitor. They killed 3 Kennedys. They've advertised with the Spider from Mars on the Northwest Station Weekly, and put George magazine before killing Circe, and when I wrote to her mother while the COVID rain came down. They delivered the letter with 2 more Kennedy murders in what they said was a freak accident. We're dealing with the criminally insane. Peter Gabriel is criminally insane. He is a deranged Israeli organ harvester. He did this whole thing for Netanyahu's gang, which is what Shulman and Leslie Katz were. They graffitied my father's obituary with the name Don't Know Who, which has Don, Ono, and Netanyahu encrypted into one little rubber stamp, and it has German Green Party. Talks about injecting people. They have this 2 virgin pussy ball thing going on where they give somebody Parkinson's as mercy because the Yoko Ono hag says she has the right to give you AIDS for David Bowie's Spider from Mars after they kill Circe Kennedy. This isn't propaganda. This is perfectly true, verifiable stage management by Roger Waters, who's a very sick, disturbing human being.